What if I told you that I have learned a way to propagate that is water-wise, cheap to set up, and saves heaps of anguish? That's exactly what I have found, and today I'm going to share it with you. Because when I moved house, I needed cuttings. I had so many rare Australian natives in the ground, and many Australian natives are really hard to propagate by cuttings. I had lots and lots of failures before I had these successes. I'm going to share the 3 best ways that I found, including the one that I now use because I think it's the best of the 3. So let's get straight into it. We're going to start at the beginning with how to take a cutting. I'm going to take you through the 3 ways, and then I'm going to give you the verdict. Which methods work best for which types of plants before I explain to you which one I think is the best one if you only want to use one of these approaches. Let's get into it.
So let's start with how I take a cutting. 1. Select a section of plant that you can cut. I usually try for about 20 centimetres or 6 inches long. Some species prefer hardwood, some soft new growth, and others semi-hardwood. When trying a plant for the first time, I try a mix so I can figure out which works best for that plant. 2. Cut below a growth point or node, which will probably be where a leaf or stalk is already growing from the stem you are cutting. Try to cut so there is still an inch or so of stem under the node. 3. Remove any flowers or fruit so that the plant can put the energy into developing new roots. 4. Remove leaves and stalks carefully from all but the top of the cutting. Leave some so that the new plant can still photosynthesize. With a sharp knife or pair of scissors, slice the stem diagonally from the lowest growth point or node to the base of the cutting. 6. Dip into rooting hormone. The powdered root hormone has given me the greatest success. The gels and honey have never worked well for me, not with Australian natives anyway. The first thing I tried was taking a plastic pot and filling the bottom with potting mix. I then placed another pot that already contained a plant into the middle and filled the plastic pot with more soil around it, packing it down well. I took cuttings. I used an old stick to poke holes into the soil before placing the cutting in the soil as deep as I could. I gently backfilled and then waited. While I waited, I made sure that as soon as the centre plant's soil dried out, I topped it up. Every so often I carefully removed the middle pot to inspect the soil for signs of root growth. Eventually, I was rewarded. Verdict: this was a great success for coleus and herb cuttings, but it didn't help with the trees. The second way was with terracotta pots and propagating sand. This time I did almost the same thing, except instead of soil I used propagating sand, and instead of a potted plant I used an empty terracotta pot. To make sure that the water leaked out slowly, I used kitchen-grade silicone to fill the hole in the bottom of the pot. The great thing about the pot being empty of plants and soil is that you can clearly see how much water is left. I topped it up whenever it emptied and waited. Every so often, I gently remove the inner pot and inspect the propagating sand for root growth. The verdict: this has been the most successful method for me. One of my lemon myrtle cuttings is alive and well after about 10 weeks using this method. I still can't see the roots, but other cuttings have already been removed with lovely roots and painstaking care. The final way is the way with terracotta pots and perlite. I decided to try this because I had run out of propagating sand and I didn't want to buy more that would need to move with us or be left behind. I did have perlite, so I followed the same methods as the propagating sand but simply used perlite instead. Verdict: this was more successful than the soil, but not as successful as the propagating sand for most of the cuttings. So here's my conclusions. Soil is fine for softwood cuttings from coleus and herbs. Propagating sand is the best medium for thirsty cuttings of hardwood and semi-hardwood. Perlite is the best medium for softwood and semi-hardwood cuttings from plants that might rot in a wetter environment. Using the terracotta is a great way to keep cuttings moist without constant watering. Also, terracotta regulates the water, transferring faster to dry soil and slowing down when the soil is wet.
Thanks for visiting the garden rooms. I hope that's been helpful. Please share if you think it's a great way to propagate. Also, in the comments, let me know, what are your propagation successes and failures? I love hearing about the different things people try. And that's what gardening is, right? A whole series of experiments to see how to make our garden the dream world that we want to explore every day. Till next time, keep on growing.